Germs, I am quite excited today because I am finally upgrading my drum preamps and I'm taking you along for the ride. This is gonna happen in 3 steps. First step, we're gonna look at the gear that I'm gonna be using, the preamps. Then we're gonna get to my drum room to do some recordings, and then we'll be coming back and listening to the results and comparing it with the old preamps. I will do my best to answer these questions. How big of a difference do drum preamps make? And does it matter in your situation? And if you're watching carefully, you might also learn that a preamp sometimes cannot save you when you make engineering mistakes. Yeah, this guy. Let's do it! So let's talk about that gear. The brain of all this is the RME UFX. The 4 preamps that you see here are going to be the basic RME preamps, which are going to be the most clinical and boring of the bunch. Not to say that they're not good. They're just going to be simple utilitarian preamps. Then you've got the Heritage Audio HA73 EQ times 2. They're colorful preamps that come with an EQ. You can push them because you have an output stage here, so I could drive these preamp pretty hard if I want. I've got also a low cut here that I can use. This will probably end up on kicks, could be snare top as well. That remains to be seen. I need to do some tests. That's what I'm doing today. Then I've got the Audient ASP 800. These preamps, at least these, I know very well because I used to own multiple Audient interfaces, and what I can say is that they are very clean, very low noise, and they are not boring. They have a certain characteristic to them in the top end that is creamy a little bit. These 2 preamps have built-in saturation to them. You have what they call HMX, which emulates sort of a tube stage saturation, and you've got the iron next to it that emulates sort of a transistor saturation, like a Nevish saturation, and you can get both at the same time, or just one, or nothing. And then I've got this 6176 preamp from Universal Audio. This is a tube preamp, very creamy. EQ here, a top shelf and a low shelf. And this is, of course, an 1176 compressor. This gives me in total 15 preamps to work with. I've also pre-plugged a snake in the Audient so that I can plug all the mics directly from here. So I'm not going to spend too much time here just talking about cable management and how you would go about setting up an SKB like this. All the cables are running on the side as much as I can to make it clean. Every cable has been rolled and taped together in a fashion that makes them stable. That's it. It's time to go to the other location. Alright, I don't know if the audio on this is gonna be shit, but don't drink and drive, don't text and drive, but if you can manage to keep your eyes on the road, maybe you can shoot and drive. I've reached my 100 subscriber recently. Let's keep going. And so it's a big mess because before I left for vacation, I had some gigs and everything is just lying there, so I'll have to prop it up and get it ready to go. Alright, I'm finally set up here, and lo and behold, this took me quite a while. I was exhausted, and 2 days have passed already. And just like a magic, we're here. If you're working alone and you're recording drums and you're engineering yourself, things will take longer. Not only do you have to set up your drums, tune them, put the mics, cable them, do your gains, you should do some recording tests and see if you like what you hear at the other end of the spectrum. And there's no control room here. It's a rehearsal room that's well isolated with high ceilings. Sounds great for drums, but I need to reference myself. So I track a little bit, listen again, readjust maybe the gain, maybe readjust any EQ moves that I want to do, check the polarity on everything, go back and forth a couple of times until I'm satisfied, and then I'm ready to track. And that's where I'm sitting right now. My recording setup. This is an old Lenovo i5 laptop. Nothing to write home about. It's good enough for tracking, but I could not mix on it. But it's doing the job very well for tracking. No hiccups whatsoever. I'm using an external SSD drive. I'm using the SanDisk Extreme Pro, if I'm not mistaken. With USB 3, it just flies the data, no problem, no issue. And another bonus with that is that I just unplug the drive, go home, plug it in, ready to mix. I captured some drums. I'm going back home. Here's a little bit of a small excerpt of me playing if you care as a transition. Here we are, and let me tell you, I am quite happy. I am satisfied with the results. I've been able to, well, first listen to the new preamps. I compared them with an old recording with the DL32 preamps. Of course, it won't be a perfect comparison because this is not the same song. The drums were tuned slightly differently. The mics were not positioned exactly the same way, but still, it is the same drums, the same microphones, the same drummer in the same room with different preamps. Let's dive in. This is my kick in. So good mojo, good thud. This was EQ'd on the way in. So we have quite a decent boundary mic. This was the Behringer 91A, which is a cheap mic, by the way, but really does the job. All right, now, so kick out, you'll see, kick out, I really overdone it. I used on the ASP 800 the saturation. There's 2 saturation knobs. I cranked them, not all the way up, but still too much. And I knew I was going too hard. I wanted to know what it sounded like on a recording in my room and just enjoy how much I can, distort that microphone. So here it is. Interesting fact, I thought that by looking at the peaks they were going to be crushed, but no, they're not. Not crushed. Just saturated as hell. Fine by me. Snare top. Man, that snare is clear, it is bright, it's got some punch. I'm loving it. Let's listen to the bottom snare now. Some people don't like bottom snare. They don't like to use them. They don't know what to do with it. I love snare bottom. I use my top to get the attack and the thud, and I use my snare bottom to get some length and some shine. I'm happy with that one. Now the toms. I was excited to try the preamps, and one thing that I have not done is tune the toms. One of them was badly tuned. It's got a new skin, and the skin was coming loose. And even worse, the microphone clip was loose, so it started going that way, and it's almost touching the skin. This microphone is not usable. This doesn't sound like a tom. It sounds like I'm hitting on some piece of cardboard. Here's a lesson for you if you're starting out. The greatest preamp will never fix a bad source. So I have a decent source that's just badly tuned and a microphone that's not positioned well. The preamp's not going to fix it. I tried to fix it. I EQ'd it a little bit, but this would not be usable. I would totally re-trigger that with a tom that sounds as close as I can to this one, or retrack if I'm aware of that early enough in the session. I overlooked some details. Here's the result. So details matter. Yeah, fine, except for that one tom that sounds like crap. And now the overheads. Ironically, that tom doesn't sound as bad in the overheads. They sound clean. I have the image of the kit. They sound crisp. Totally usable for me. And now, for the fun part, one ribbon mic in front of the kit in the 6176 preamp. I pushed it hard. It is just, it wants to explode. I really like it. I'll show you what I'll do with that one later on. And now I've got a dirt mic. It was the vocal mic that I was using in the room, and it's compressing by the compressor in the Total Mix Effects, and I really love how it sounds as well. We're gonna have fun with that. And finally, the hi-hat. So this is a dark hi-hat. I really like it because I can EQ it to my heart's content. Choosing your source properly will affect the end tone. So here's the whole thing, balanced, no EQ. Oh yeah. Now let's compare it with the other preamps. I gain matched them before, so the difference in volume, it's the shape of the sound, it's not the gain. Where we're gonna hear the most difference is at the sum. Listen to the DL32s as a whole. The new pre's. I mean, I don't know about you, but I hear much more mojo, much more vibe, and a better EQ curve in general. It's both smoother, more biting, more present. It feels better to me. That is definitely something to consider when you're thinking about drum preamps, the sum of it. All right, now for some fun. Here's what I did with the room mics. This might be a fun tip for you guys if you're dealing with limited amount of preamps, limited amount of microphones. Here's what you can do. These are both mono tracks, and now in Cubase 13, what you can do is take a track that is mono and make it stereo. You see this little knob here. If I click on it, boop, makes it mono. Do it again, boop, stereo. Or you can just send your mono track to a stereo group. Use that as your stereo track, your stereo input to do whatever processing that you want. What I did with the mono dirt is I put Rotten Pool reverb. It's an IR of a pool in Germany that is now destroyed. I still wanted this to be a close room, but with that dirty reverb added to it, it just adds even more mojo. What I did with the second one, I used Reverence, which is, again, impulse response built in Cubase. I used the default preset at 87%, and here's what I arrive at. I have a room. It sounds wide, it sounds big. When I combine both of these, in context with the rest of the kit, and now to answer these questions, do drum preamps really matter? If you were listening carefully, you probably heard a difference in the sum of the preamps. And if you didn't, that is completely fine as well. Any professional will tell you that eventually you get to that level with your ears where preamps, they make a difference. Should that be your priority number one? Absolutely not. Here is where I think preamps fit in the hierarchy. First, you're playing. If your drum playing sucks, whatever comes after it will be a capture of that thing that sucks. So get your playing in order. Practice, get ready for your takes, or do another take. Next thing you should worry about is the source. If you show up with a shitty snare drum that's got a beaten snare skin that's badly tuned, well, the result is gonna be Next thing on the list would be the microphone. Choosing it for the job, choosing it for the source, knowing how to position it for recording, making sure your phase relationship is good. Then you can start worrying about your preamps. Let me know in the comments, if you're recording drums, what do you do? What kind of preamps are you using? Are you satisfied with them? And if you're not a drummer, but you want to record drums, do you go in a professional studio? Do you hire a guy like me to do it? Or do you just do your best with what you've got? Or do you program MIDI drums? Let me know. I want to know. Bye. See you in the next one.